My guest for this episode is Sam Sycamore. Sam is a writer, web developer, tree hugger, and avowed music junkie. He currently works as head of content strategy and marketing at Hashnode, which is a global tech blogging platform that enables bloggers to tap into a fast-growing and supportive community of readers, writers, and tech enthusiasts. I think you'll enjoy learning how he took control of his life and completely redefined his career last year. This is Invincible Career, and I'm Larry Cornett. So welcome to the show, Sam. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really a pleasure.
So let's start out and talk a little bit more about who you are and what you're doing right now, because you just recently had a big change in your career, and so I think that's kind of an exciting thing to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the best place to start is where I'm at currently, which is I just started a new position with a company called Hashnode, pretty sweet tech blogging platform.
Yeah.
And I am their new head of content strategy and marketing, which is something that I honestly never expected to land on, but somehow it's kind of the perfect fit for me, as it turns out. It almost feels like the position was tailor-made for me, and I guess it kind of was, being that it's for a startup. So I've been, the way I describe it is I've worked a lot of odd jobs over the years to support my hopeless addiction to writing.
There you go.
Yeah, so writing is kind of the theme, the thread that connects all of my prior experiences, which have taken me to a lot of different places.
Yeah, no kidding. So, and that's how I kind of bumped into you. Is you're very active on Twitter, and you say a lot of interesting things. And it's like, so I started following you, and I was like, this is so cool. And then you were talking more about your career path and learning JavaScript and becoming a front end developer. Probably started last year, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then recently what's going on with Hashnode. So yeah, it was an interesting year last year, and it continues to be. It's not like things stabilized really.
I can say that again.
What were you thinking, and what was kind of going through your life at the point where you said, I'm going to educate myself on front end web development, JavaScript, and all that?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a pretty long and sordid path to get there, honestly. So right out of college, I started working as a music journalist,
Cool.
which was super fun, and it paid my bills for about 2 years until it didn't anymore. And I really got burned out on the hustle and grind of constantly seeking new clients and constantly pitching new stuff and getting paid in free beer and concert tickets.
Yeah, can't buy groceries with that.
And so something I've always been passionate about is self-reliance, sustainability, natural living close to nature. It's something I'm really passionate about. And around 2015, I had kind of one of those, if not now, when sort of moments. Like for me, I always had in the back of my mind, like, one day when I'm in my 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s,
I'm familiar with that one day.
at the end of some lucrative career, then I'll go do all the things that I actually care about in life.
Yeah, well, that sounds familiar.
And so I'm coming up on 35 now. So this was like late 20s. I was kind of looking around in my life and feeling like I was looking at a lot of different dead ends, and just had one of those, if not now, when moments. Like, I'm not getting any younger. This is the thing I really care about. So I'm just going to go all in. So I basically dropped everything I was doing at the time, and started learning skills, specifically carpentry and horticulture, gardening, landscaping. Just taking lots of odd jobs that I would find on Craigslist as a way to continuously expand my skill set.
Yeah.
Really, really fell in love with, just like getting my hands dirty. Like I just love building things, creating things. It almost doesn't matter what the thing is. It's just the satisfaction of having created the thing that really does it for me. Yeah. And so I did that for 4 or 5 years, but I was always blogging on the side, and I didn't really have a phrase for it at the time, but I was really learning in public. So I
Right.
was
Yeah.
investing in myself, picking up these skills, and then sharing what I was learning through my blog and then later
That's cool.
podcast. And so I was doing these two things kind of simultaneously, and yeah, and then the pandemic hit. And that was kind of another like, okay, it's time to take a step back,
Right.
reflect on what we're doing, where we're going. Is this taking me where I really want to go in
Hmm.
life? And I the answer I had, the harsh truth was that no, it wasn't taking me where I
Hmm.
wanted to
Okay.
go. Especially the work that I was doing in the skilled trades. I was like, I had several years of experience, but I was still just living paycheck to paycheck. I could
Sure.
barely afford the health insurance that I needed because the
Yeah.
work was starting to take its toll on my body. And yeah, so I kind of, so last fall, this would have been August or September of
Okay.
2020. It was kind of my breaking point. So my dog, his name's Jojo. He's a beautiful, sweet, great
I've seen him.
Pyrenees.
He's huge.
Yeah, he's about as big as I am.
Yeah.
He has what's called degenerative ligament disease,
Okay. Yeah.
which means that his knees are no good, basically. And
Mm-hmm.
so last fall, the writings were kind of already on the wall. He was like limping a lot, not as active as he had been. One day, just sort of out of the blue, he completely blew out one of his knees,
Oh.
and I was facing down a really expensive surgery that he
Yep.
needed. And smaller dogs, they can kind of like get away without a surgery. They can just
Yeah.
kind of limp along okay. But if you're 150 pounds, you're
Right.
basically signing up for a lifetime of arthritis at
Right.
best.
Right.
And so yeah, I was facing down this very expensive surgery for this creature who's like
Mm.
the most important being in my daily life, and
Yeah.
I couldn't afford it. Not only could I not afford it, but the the thought of being able to afford, like, the amount of money that I needed was so far beyond the realm of like what I could
Sure.
ever reasonably save up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I was extremely fortunate to have friends and family to lean on, who were able to pitch in to make it happen.
Oh, that's good.
Um, yeah, that was really a breaking point for me. I realized, like,
Okay.
how am I ever gonna take care of a family in the future if I can't even take care of this dog? And like,
Mm-hmm.
if this
Mm-hmm.
career is not gonna get me there, then what what else
Yeah.
could I do?
Right. Right.
and
Yeah.
and so yeah, so I took a look around. What skills do I have that are sort of that I could pivot or like lean on? And I
Mm-hmm.
had this prior experience publishing online. I'd done a
Right.
lot of like WordPress, Squarespace, and then
Okay.
also
Yeah.
content marketing, right? So I'm publishing blog posts and podcasts, and I'm sort of
Right.
like learning through the school of hard knocks, like how to create stuff that people want to engage with, and that
Yeah.
people care about. And yeah, so I decided, okay, let's see what sort of opportunities are out there in web development. So I signed up for free code camp, like a lot of us do,
Yeah. That's
and
cool.
started teaching myself. And yeah, after about 4 or 5 months, I started landing freelance gigs, just like building websites for clients.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that pretty much leads me to today.
Yeah. Yeah. You shared some of the numbers there, and it's actually become pretty lucrative for you. I saw that's cool. That's very cool. Pretty quickly. Yeah. Some people it takes
Yeah,
a little bit longer. Yeah.
yeah, I would definitely, I would tell everybody, I would offer the disclaimer that I am an outlier. I did not expect to be able to get into the tech industry as quickly and sort of efficiently as I have.
Yeah.
But it's possible. Like, it's a lot easier than you might suspect, especially as I've discovered,
Yeah.
coming from a different career. You already
Right.
have all of these skills that you can leverage to make yourself unique.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that some of these core skills and talents that they have are transferable across different domains. And I'll talk with people because I do a lot of career coaching stuff, and they're like, "Well, I did this, so there's no way I can move into this industry or this profession." I was like, if you get to the root of it, like the stuff you're doing, that stuff transfers. It's like you have to think about. I talk about like building things up from little Lego pieces, like deconstruct your current career or profession and look at the Lego pieces and say, how could I reassemble those in a different way? Which it sounds a lot like what you did. And you're really good at the content marketing stuff, like on Twitter, like you crush it. I mean, you're so good on Twitter. It's amazing.
I
Like, how
appreciate
much
that.
of a role did Twitter play with you kind of expanding your footprint as a freelancer and landing gigs? Because I know some people get all their work through Twitter.
Twitter has 100. It has been my entire career in tech up to this
Okay.
point. Quite
Okay.
honestly, I sort of disavowed social media a couple years ago.
Yeah, I get
I,
that.
as I think many of us are wont to do.
Hmm.
But yeah, I was just like, I'm done with this. It only makes me feel miserable all the time every time I log in.
Right.
So like, why am I
Right.
doing this to myself? But so when I started learning to code last fall, I started with at one point the Odin project. I think it's just the
Mm-hmm.
odinproject.com. And early on in their curriculum, they say, hey, go sign up for Twitter and do what's called a 100 days of code challenge, where
Hmm.
it's basically exactly what it sounds like. You just commit like, okay, every day for the next 100 days, I'm going to do something code related and I'm going to tweet about it. And it's a really sweet way to hold yourself accountable. And along the
Sure. Yeah.
way, you will invariably, meet other people and start chatting about whatever you're doing. And so yeah, I did just that. I signed up for Twitter in October just to be like, okay, this is my tech Twitter outing. I'm gonna do 100 days of code challenge. I think I made it like
Nice.
30 or 40 days. um, and yeah, almost immediately I started to realize like, wow, this is a real way that I can have one-on-one conversations with people who are in the
Right.
industry, so I can figure out what I need to know and who I need to know to get in.
Yeah.
And that's what I've done. So almost all of my freelancing work and my new role with Hashnode, I would credit all of that to just being friendly on Twitter and having lots of conversations with people.
Yeah, I tell people to do that. It's like Twitter can be good. And I had the same experience. I used Twitter, then I got off Twitter for years. And I think it all comes down to curating your network and making sure the people that you're communicating with and connecting with are good people with shared goals and you're helping each other and they're not tearing each other down. And I think it's entirely possible. You just have you're only going to see things from people you follow. So if you don't like the experience, unfollow. Unfollow, block people. I've had to block a few people. I mean, it happens, but now that I'm doing more of that, by and large, the Twitter experience has improved, several fold. It's amazing. Way better than it was before for me, completely.
Yeah, same here. I always encourage people to just like be intentional about why
Yeah.
you're showing up on social media. Like for me, I get a lot of value out of engaging with the community, and so when I show up on social media, I'm very intentional about being enthusiastic and like caring about
Yeah.
what other people are doing and offering encouragement and support.
Yeah.
And I find that when that's my focus, that's what I receive in return, and that's what shows up in my feed. So that seems
Yeah.
to work out pretty well for
Oh, it certainly looks like it.
me.
What has the transition been like? So it's a big transition to go from carpentry and landscaping and the stuff that you've been doing before into kind of being a 100% developer. And now you're doing developer evangelism, things like that. What has that transition felt like for you?
It has been extremely turbulent. um, you know, one thing we're all guilty of this, right? On social media, like if you look at my Twitter account, you're going to see all my wins from the last 6 months.
Sure. Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
you're not going to see the like nights where I'm like drenched in sweat, like anxious out of my mind. Like, what am I doing? Am I totally insane? Who told me it was a good idea to do any of this? You know, but
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, in practical terms, last fall, so I was working full time in landscape construction.
Okay.
I live outside of Santa Cruz, California, and so I was
My
getting
old
to do
stomping grounds. Cool.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing some really cool stuff. It was very frustrating. I got this job doing like pretty high end carpentry, exterior carpentry,
Yeah.
and landscaping, and I found that even in like the perfect role for me, the job still just kind of sucks. And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I started learning the code, and what that looked like for me was waking up at 4 a.m. every day of the week.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, I'd get up at 4. By about 4:30, I would settle down in front of my desk, I could study for about 2 hours before I needed to like pack my lunch for the day, make some
Mm-hmm.
breakfast, and drive down to town to start work. And then, so that was for the first like month or two. It was kind of every morning at 4 a.m. and then as much time as I could sacrifice on the weekends. And then
Sure.
once I really got in the flow, I started putting in nights too. So I'd do, 2 hours in the morning, and then I'd do an hour or two before I went to bed, just completely
Okay.
exhausted, drained, no energy left. But like, let's just get the spaced repetition in, right? Like keep
Right. Yeah.
revisiting these ideas. And yeah, and then um, so I kept that up for about 4 or 5 months, and then
Okay.
in January of 2021, um, I was dealing with, I'm still dealing with a chronic injury in one of my feet.
Oh, from
Just
work.
yeah,
Yeah.
just from
Yeah.
doing the work. It's called sesamoiditis, which
Hmm.
basically means like the ball of my foot is chronically inflamed.
Oh man.
Um, and it was one of those things. It's like it's this little ache and pain that's in the background every day. Can't do
Sure.
anything about it. Got to get the job done. So you just work through the pain, right?
Right.
But it reached a point of no return in
Mm-hmm.
January, where it got to the point where like I can't stand on my feet all day. Like I just
Yeah.
have to. Oops, I have to quit my job because I can't do the work anymore.
Wow.
and
Wow.
and so that was my sink or swim moment, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was really fortunate to have a mentor by this time in the
Oh,
realm
good.
of coding, who said like, look, you have the skills, you can freelance, go hustle for clients, go find people who need to build websites and pitch your services.
Right.
You can make enough money doing that if you hustle. And
Right.
so I took that to heart, and it took me about 2 or 3 weeks in
Okay.
January before I finally landed my first two clients, actually on the same day.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Just kind of a miracle, yeah. And those two clients paid my bills for the next 2 months.
Oh, that's perfect.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, it was kind of like it was almost this what's the word, kismet, like this like
Mm-hmm.
sort of like cosmic energy that sort of all coalesced all at once, like this horrible thing. I have this injury that takes me out of work, and it forces me to be like, okay,
Right.
i'm
Right.
i'm a programmer now because there's no other way I can make money.
Yeah, it's funny how that sometimes it has to happen, and I wrote an article about this, and I write a lot too, and I love it. But it was like if you're too comfortable in your job and you just never make a change, you're making good money, it's okay. You don't love it, maybe even you hate it, but you're comfortable. And it sometimes takes like this really painful event, like a layoff or getting fired or an injury or whatever it might be, that forces you to make a change. And then it's a sink or swim moment, and it's not fun. But I think more people than not rise to the challenge and say, okay, if I have no other choice, I've got to find a way to make this work. And I've read so many, kind of stories of people who've been fired, laid off, something bad happened. They were forced to do something different. I remember somebody got fired from a media job. They said, well, I guess I'll start my own podcast because I know how to do it. And now they're bringing in like 2 million a year. And it's like, it's
Wow.
crazy. It's like way more money than they were ever making as a full-time journalist. And it's funny how sometimes those tragic moments actually end up being the best thing in the world for us. It forces us onto a new path. And that's great to hear that. I mean, that's pretty tremendous. That's fast, which is cool.
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible. And then, like I said, as I started getting deeper into freelance, like I realized this is a viable path.
Yeah.
Then I really started looking for, okay, what are the other ways that I can leverage my existing skills, right? So
Okay.
that's when I started finding gigs as a technical writer. So I'm like,
Oh, cool.
okay, I'm a good writer. I know how to code. I can explain code to other people. And
Right. Right.
so
Yeah.
so then I started landing other gigs doing that, and then that's the stuff that eventually led me to the role at Hashnode. Now they noticed me as a
So they
blogger.
discovered you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they noticed me as a
Oh,
blogger in
cool.
the community and said, "Hey, we love your work. Let's talk about how you can, do what you're doing, but for us."
That's so cool. So everybody listening, I don't know how many times I've said this, and I know some of you have with very positive results. You got to get out there. You got to get your word out there. You got to write. You got to be on Twitter, whatever your medium is. Maybe some people it's making videos, podcasting, whatever. But great people can discover you, but only if you're out there. They're not going to find you if you're kind of just sitting behind your desk and working and never talking about it or never writing about it. but you're another great example. It's like, get the word out there, show what you can do, show how you think, and people notice. That's pretty incredible. I mean, that's like, you're a walking advertisement for it. It's like, come on, everybody, start writing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, don't just take my word for it. As I've built up this professional network on Twitter, I've become pretty good friends with quite a few people who are in similar positions as me. And I've watched many of them now land jobs doing this through the same process, right? Just
really?
like posting about what they're doing on Twitter. I have a friend who she made a coding project. It generates a README file for your coding project automatically.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's a really neat project. It wasn't like a huge thing. She built it in a weekend because it was something she thought would be cool. It got retweeted by GitHub, which is like the company that hosts all of the code on planet Earth, owned by Microsoft. They retweeted her tweet about this project. Fast forward 2 months later, she now works for GitHub.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's so cool.
Because of that project. Like,
because she made a cool project. Yeah.
She made a cool project that was relevant to the platform, and now she works for them.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. So what advice, and this you already shared some actually, but what advice would you give to other folks who are interested in switching into a tech career, like transitioning from something very different into tech?
Yeah. Step one, find a community. That's the thing that makes all the difference in everybody that I've observed. I know for myself, where I'm coming from, my background, I don't know anybody, or I didn't know anybody in tech before I started. So I'm literally alone in a room, 4 a.m., pitch black, learning to code, right? Like, it's really hard to stay motivated and to hold yourself accountable when you have no interaction with anybody else on planet Earth who's doing the same thing. So like, you have to find your community. Okay. Tech Twitter is one of the most welcoming and inviting communities I've ever found online. There are super awesome people there, myself included, who would love to help you out and will go out of their way to help you as they've helped me. I think that's before anything else, like number one, find your people.
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree. There's been an interesting conversation talking about the shift that's happening. So, Web 1, Web 2, we've had the big platforms and social media and Facebook and Twitter and so forth. Now we're starting to see the passion economy. There was the gig economy, which I think people realized, it's okay. It helps pay the bills a little bit, but you have no control. You don't control your Uber pricing. It's whatever Uber, the platform, determines. Even if you're the best driver and most entertaining person in the world, you don't charge differently than anybody else. But the new passion economy, the creator economy, is enabling people to take their skills, their talents, their unique personality like yourself, and essentially turn that into kind of a business and do something with it, which is powerful. So I think it's going to change everything. I think there's a whole shift coming, and the folks like the founder of Mighty Networks and a few others have said, what goes with this is community. And it's really about creating your own kind of micro community around a shared interest. And it's very smallish. It can get somewhat big, but it'll never be like you're on the platform with 100 million people. It's not like that. Very focused, very supportive. And that's why I've been building communities too. I have a Slack community, I have Mighty Networks, and I'm playing with Geneva right now, which is pretty cool. And it's because of that. I'm a solopreneur, and it gets lonely. You get lonely. You want somebody to talk with about stuff. You want support. You want to be able to hold each other accountable. Like, hey, are you still making progress on the book you said you're going to write? That kind of thing. And I do think this next wave that's coming is going to be these communities. It's going to be forming communities, joining communities that really can help you with your very, very focused goals, what you're trying to accomplish. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and this kind of ties into my, my current role with Hashnode. Is like one of the early lessons that the company has discovered as they've ventured out into marketing, advertising, content marketing, is that like the big stuff isn't very effective. Like the way that we consume media and connect with each other now is just so decentralized. It's like, it's often not in your best interest to target, the group with 1 million users. You're way better off targeting the group with 200 users who are all super enthusiastic.
Right. Yeah, that's that thousand true fan things, right? It's like if
Yeah,
I could just find a
absolutely.
few people that love what I do, unless you're greedy, it's like I can make a living doing this. I don't need millions of people follow
Hmm.
me or hundreds of millions of people buying my product. I don't need it.
And yeah,
Um,
that's interesting what you mentioned there. Because I've done a lot of freelancing. I've been self-employed in various capacities, and especially when I was doing my podcast full time, it's really difficult to do a podcast full
yeah,
time when you're doing it by yourself.
it
This
is.
It requires basically every kind of skill set that exists,
Yeah, it
and
does.
and so now that I'm on with Hashnode, it's kind of a dream because like now I have a team. So like
Oh, you have
when
a production team?
well, yeah. So like
Oh, that's a dream. Yeah.
when I want to like do some kind of video or audio,
Yeah.
any kind of content, like I just get to make the thing, right? Like I get to do the part that I really like, which is talk, and then
Right.
I can
Right.
hand it off to the designer who will do all of the
Oh,
branding.
wow.
And I'm the copywriter, so I'm doing that part. But then, like and then there's this brand that like has this whole image that's going to promote
Right.
this to a much larger audience that I would be able to
Yeah.
reach on my own. And so I'm experiencing already that we're greater than the sum of our
That's
parts,
true.
right?
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah. I'm a one man show right now.
Hey,
I've
good
become
on
really
you.
good at audio editing. It's like, hey,
Yep.
you gotta, but I could see the benefits. I have another podcast where we had some college interns that helped out and it was incredible. I mean, they could do like motion graphics and they were doing a lot of stuff with the content and editing and doing videos for us. And, they had to go back to school and we're like, oh no. And a lot of it has fallen through the cracks because they were fantastic at doing it.
Mhm.
So I want to spend just a couple of minutes because we had a little bit of time left talking about kind of your lifestyle because it's very unique and different and cool. You're really into sustainability and you're living off grid, and you have the cabin. I think you also have the stuff. Did you build the attachment for your truck? Oh, you did
Yeah,
that. That's cool.
yeah, yeah. So I'm a pretty strange bird in the tech industry for sure. Yeah, I moved out here to California about 3 years ago. And a
Okay.
friend of mine purchased some land here in the Santa Cruz Mountains. It's about 7 acres on the side of a
Oh
mountain.
wow, nice.
It's incredible. It's one of the dreamiest places I've ever been.
Yeah.
And so he and his family are in the process of building a home there, developing it
Okay.
into a homestead that they will carry out the rest of their years on. But in
Right.
the meantime, there is this tiny little cabin in the woods there. They have graciously let me stay
Oh, that's
in
so
exchange
cool.
for I'm basically what you would call the live-in groundskeeper, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like I said, I'm really passionate about horticulture, so I do a lot of gardening and tending the trees on the property and stuff. And yeah, so the cabin right now there are no amenities on the site. So
Wow.
I don't have running water and I don't have conventional electricity.
You're pure
uh,
solar, right?
yeah, so I have
Nice.
two different solar battery. They're battery banks, so they store energy and then they also do like the inverting,
Right.
what have you, and yeah, and then some portable solar panels that I carry up and down the side of the hill for half the year when there's no sunlight. But yeah, and then all of my water, I just have. You can see on the video here, I've got one of my jugs back here. I need to fill up since I'm in town right now.
Oh, okay, cool.
But yeah, so I just have a bunch of 5-gallon jugs that I fill up like once a week, pretty much, and that's all my drinking water. I always tell people like it's kind of a cliche especially among people in tech. They're like, oh, I wish I could just give up this whole computer thing and go, live off grid in a
Yeah.
cabin in the woods. And I'm like, everybody thinks they want to live in a cabin in the woods until it comes time to haul your drinking water up the side of a
Yeah.
mountain.
Yes, I've learned. I mean, we're looking at new properties now, and the number one thing I'm looking for is it has a well. It's got water because people underestimate. They're just so used to city water, and it's like if you get a property without water, it's a lot of work, a ton
Indeed.
of work.
Yeah, it's yeah, my lifestyle is basically a part-time job unto itself.
Yeah, it's really cool though. So you've written a couple of books. I want to make sure you have some time to kind of talk about how people can discover you, follow you. I know you've got a couple of books on foraging that you've written. You want to share some of the places people can learn more about you and the work that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to find me these days, where I'm most active, as we mentioned, is Twitter.
Yeah.
I am Tan Oak Sam over there.
Okay.
That's tan oak, like the tree. It's one of the trees that I tend underneath the redwoods.
Yeah, they're beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you can find me on Twitter. Tan Oak Sam over there. You can find me on Hashnode, where I'll be publishing more and more frequently now that I'm working for them.
Cool.
That's at blog.sycamore.design.
Okay.
And then, yeah, in my past life, as we alluded to, I was a lifestyle blogger and podcaster. I used to have a podcast called The Good Life Revival, where if you're curious about what we've been talking about the last few minutes, just like my lifestyle and sort of my philosophy around lifestyle design, you might want to check out the podcast. And so that's thegoodliferevival.com. And you can also find my 2 self-published books on foraging there, you're interested in wild plant identification.
Very cool. Yeah, I just checked it out. My kids spent a lot of time in Henry Cowell growing up.
Nice.
And they were kind of educated. They spent, at least one day a week, sometimes multiple days, with people who were very familiar with living off the land and identification. So they'd build, like little structures, and they would harvest stuff and eat stuff. And it's pretty incredible. And they loved the experience. So yeah, I was taking a look at your stuff. I was like, that looks familiar. That's very cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I love to hear that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to having enough free time now that I work in tech, that I can take some time in my free time and do more educating around those topics, especially especially hanging out with kids. I would really like to get some like homeschool groups together and teach them about plants.
Yeah, our kids were homeschooled, so yeah.
Cool.
That's the only reason they had that freedom. But
yeah, totally.
Great education.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Sam. Thanks for making the time to come on the show. It's really been fun hearing about your career transition and the process. I think what you're sharing is going to be super helpful for other folks that are either just getting started in tech or have an interest in transitioning into tech, and how you did it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you bringing me on. It's been a pleasure chatting.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you would like to follow upcoming releases of the show, please subscribe. And as always, I appreciate your ratings and reviews. Thank you. If you would like to learn more about Invincible Career and the podcast, you can visit invinciblecareer.com. Until next time, I wish you the best of luck in becoming an opportunity magnet for the best things in life.